Now, the final step is the closing. This is where the buyer, the seller, the attorneys, and the bank all meet to transfer the property. It's basically the final step. When this is over, you no longer own the property and the buyers do. Now, one of the things you have to be careful about is getting all the proper documents to the closing attorney. Now, what I normally do is I set up an online transaction room. I put all the documents in there and give whoever needs to know them permission to just simply log on and take them. It saves a lot of trouble. If you're doing this on your own, what you might want to do is set up a folder on your computer and place all the documents in there. And then when somebody requests one, you simply just have to highlight it and email it to them. So you need to have all the documents and you need to have them available, especially to the closing attorney. Okay, you also have to bring a certificate to the closing saying that your smoke detectors and CO2 detectors are in proper order and working. You need to call your local fire department to do this. They will come and inspect it. There is a fee. If you haven't got them installed, good idea to call them and ask them where they want them placed, because I've noticed sometimes from city to city the placement is a little bit different. They will come to your house, they will inspect them. Of course, if it fails, you will have to repair them and pay for another inspection fee. They will also just kind of give a glance over of your house and certify that you've got all the proper detectors working. This certificate needs to be brought to the closing. You also need to bring a paid water bill, and when I say paid, within a few days of the closing, because the water bill is a municipal lien on the house, and they will not let the house transfer with any liens on it. In other words, that bill would pass over to the new buyer. So any liens on the property have to be paid off, and the most likely one is, unless you've got a well, is a water bill. You bring a paid receipt to the closing. You also need to call the closing attorney and ask him if he has all the documents that he needs. As a matter of fact, what I do is I fax a list of the documents that I have sent to him, and I ask on that, are there any other documents that you need? Then I follow that up with a call to the secretary or who's ever managing the document saying, you know, did you look at that? Do I have everything? Is there anything else that you need? So that way, if I show up at the closing and they say, well, you know, where's this document? I say, hey, look, I sent you this fax and you didn't respond. You didn't say you needed anything else. So try to get a list of the documents you have to the closing attorney. Ask him if you need any more. Now, you should have your attorney present at the closing. Now, some people don't. The actual closing attorney can fulfill some of the necessary procedures to get the job done. But you have to remember, the closing attorney represents the bank, not you. So, and the buyers, they may have their attorney, and if kind of like problems come up, you'll need your attorney present, especially on the mortgage note. You probably will not understand the mortgage note, and if there's any problems or any fees that have to be recalculated, you'll want your attorney there with you. So especially if you're doing this yourself and will not have a real estate agent present, you want to make sure to have your attorney present at the closing. Now, one of the things you want to do is close before the closing deadline. When you have the purchase and sale and the offer, there will be a date that the property has to close by. This is a drop dead date. If it goes beyond that and you're at fault, the buyers could back out. So I always try to ask everyone, can we please close a few days before the closing? That way you get to the closing, somebody's missing a document, everything will be done, and then the next couple of days, all they have to do is get that document in. As long as it's before the deadline date. If something happens and you're there at the deadline date, somebody doesn't have something, you don't have a document, the buyers could back out of the deal. You'd have to ask them to sign an extension for the closing. Now, if they really like the property, they'll probably do it, but they might not. So once again, try to close at least a few days before the absolute deadline to close. You'll save yourself a lot of trouble. Okay, the next is totally optional. It's called a closing gift. Some people do it, Some people don't. You don't have to go overboard on it. I've seen closing gifts like a bottle of wine, bottle of champagne, ticket to the movies, dinner, stuff like that. And once again, just totally optional. You don't have to do it. But just to warn you, the buyers may bring one. So you don't have to do it though.